Today we are going to learn how to draw Low Red Riding Hood using the pen tool and some of the basic primitive shape tools like the rectangle tool, ellipse tool. It's a good, quick and easy tutorial to get you familiar with some of the basic tools and basic panels within the software. So let's get into it. First thing, file new. And 8.5 by 11 inches is fine. And then change the color mode. Make sure it's set to RGB. Otherwise, you're gonna have a hard time whenever it starts telling you to select the colors. All right, cool. So first things first, we're gonna draw a circle using the ellipse tool. You can hit L on your keyboard or grab the ellipse tool on the left. And whenever you draw your circle, if you hold shift, that'll help you get a perfect circle. If you don't hold shift, you'll get this weird oval. Let's make our head a circle. And then let's open up the color of the fill. Weird. Open up the fill and then hit the color mixer and you get these little numbers here on the side. It says 223, 178, 39. 223, 178, 139. There we go. And then let's take away the stroke. Come on, man. Okay. Now we make some eyes. Again, hitting the ellipse tool, holding shift and clicking and dragging. This time the color should be 242, 242, 242. There we go. All right. Next, we're gonna make another circle and I'm gonna hit Command C or Control C for those of you that are on PC, and then Command Shift V or Control Shift V. And what that does is paste in place. So you copy and then paste exactly where the first one was. I like to do that whenever I'm trying to do some sort of like precise thing where I don't want to have the pasted item floating all around my artboard. Next, let's change the eye color to 84, 49, 36. 49, 36. There we go. And then draw another little circle, a little white one, inside of the pupil. And to do that again, I'll do Command C or Control C, and then Command Shift V or Control Shift V for those of you on PC. And then I'll scale it down by clicking and dragging with the selection tool, and I hold Option and Shift to make it scale proportionately. Fill. This time I don't need to pick any of the numbers because white is right here. Bingo, white. Next, we're going to start drawing the eyelashes using the pen tool. So I hit P on my keyboard or click the pen tool up in the left hand panel, the tool panel. Then I click and drag because I know I want that first path to be curved. Click and drag again. And then before I let go of the click, I hit Option so that I can swing around my handle. Come over here, click and drag. And again, before I let go of the click, I hit Option so I can swing around the handle. And I'm pointing the handle in the direction that I know I want my path to go. Repeat over and over and over, holding Option, swinging the handle, click and drag, hold Option, swing the handle, click and drag, hold Option, swing the handle, click and drag, hold Option, swing the handle, click and drag, pointing that handle in the direction that I want it to go. And then I click that last point. If I want, I can grab my direct selection tool, zoom in a little bit, and adjust a little bit to get these guys a little bit more perfect. Adjusting the handles as well as the location of the points. And then the last thing that I want to do is make them brown, just like this. 84, 49, 36. Okay, and then I want to move them behind the eye. You can do that by going right click, arrange, send to back. But if we send to back, it went all the way to the back. Now it's beneath the skin tone circle. So if I go right click, arrange, send to back on this one, now I just sent the circle back further. Another way to do that is to click on the object and hit Command Shift left bracket or Command Shift right bracket. Command Shift left bracket will take it all the way to the back. Command Shift right bracket will take it all the way to the front, or Control Shift if you're on a PC. Or if you want to just go one at a time rather than going all the way to the back, you can just hit Command left bracket and tap the left bracket until it moves its way down in the layer stack, or Control left bracket until it moves its way down into the layer stack. Cool. Next, we want to recreate this eyeball without having to redraw the whole thing. Pretty easy. If you grab your selection tool, the black arrow, click and drag around all of the objects, and then we also have the whole face selected in the back, the peach circle. We don't want that, so we can hit Shift and click on it so that now we only have the eyeball, the eyelash, those things selected, and not the circle in the back. Now right click, transform, reflect, and we want to reflect it vertically, but we don't want to just reflect it. You can see it's already done that on the screen. It's just reflected it across the vertical axis. What we want to do is take that vertical reflection and make a copy of it. So we click copy instead of clicking OK. Bingo. Now I'm hitting the right arrow on my keyboard, but you can click and drag and hold Shift if you like to keep it in line. If you don't hold Shift, you can click and drag it anywhere you want, but holding Shift will keep it perfectly in line, so she doesn't end up looking crazy. There we go. And if you hold Shift while you click and drag, you don't have to use the alignment tool to arrange them. But if you want, you can go and hold Shift and click and drag so that now we've grabbed the other eyeball and the face in the back. And then we and while holding Shift, we click the circle in the background again. And what we're doing when we're holding Shift is adding or taking away from the objects that we're selecting on our artboard to make sure that we only have what we want to affect selected. So next we can go right click, group, or for those of you that like keyboard shortcuts, Control G or Command G. And if you like the top menu, object, group, it's not going to show group because we've already done it. But anyways, Command G to group. And then now these eyeballs are acting as one group. If we want to mess with the eyeballs some more and get in and edit them more refined, we can double click into them, and now you can see we're isolated in them, and everything else that's in the background is sort of washed out. That's indicated up here that we're now within this group in layer 1. If we want to get out of it, we can hit escape or click this back arrow to get out of that isolation. So now click and drag around and hit align. Boom, align center. So it took this group of eyeballs in this circle and then aligned them on a center axis. Next, we're going to draw our mouth. We're going to start by making an ellipse or a circle and coloring it pink. And 235, 122, 121. There we go. And now we're going to duplicate this. And another way to duplicate things is by holding Option or Alt on your keyboard and then clicking and dragging. You can see the cursor changes to a little duplicate cursor, kind of showing you that you're going to duplicate the object. And I held Shift while I was clicking and dragging to make sure that I duplicated it straight up. And now I'm going to scale it up a little bit while holding Option and Shift or Alt and Shift, and that allows me to constrain proportions and expand from the center. Now I have both of these circles. I'll click and drag around them and click minus front on the Pathfinder. Boom. Now we got a nice little circle. So what it did was it took this big circle on the top and used it like it was a cookie cutter on the circle on the bottom. Minus front is one of the Pathfinder tools that I find myself using the most. Put it in here. Let's click and drag around all of them. And again, we can align on the center. Wow, I had it just right. But if I didn't, you'd see. Click center, it'll center align everything. Smile looks a little big, kind of creepy. Let's scale it down a little bit. When it's real small, it looks real cute. Next, we're gonna add some nice little rosy cheeks. Hit the ellipse tool, make a little ellipse, and then let's change the color to 223, 160, 133. 160, 133. Bingo. And then let's rotate it a little bit. And then just like we did with the eyeball, right click, transform, reflect. We're going to reflect it on the vertical axis and make a copy of it on that vertical axis. And now I've got another one. Click and drag it over. Ta-da! Very nice. Now, if you want, you can group those two together. And since we know that everything else is centrally aligned, we can hit Shift and just click the circle and center align. Or we can click, but the thing is, whenever we do that, we've center aligned these two ellipses and the circle, but it shifted over. So everything else is not perfectly aligned now. If you want to make it completely perfect, you can click and drag around all of it and hit center align again. You saw it shifted over just a little bit there. All right, next we're gonna start drawing her hair. So you wanna grab the pen tool, and before you get started, change the color to 135, 83, 65 for a nice little light brown color. And this one, just like the eyelashes, we're going to click and drag where we want these curved handles, and then in some cases we'll hold Option to swing the handle around to reposition the direction that we want the handle to go in as we move forward. So I start down here, kind of below what would be her cheek. Click and drag up and to the left. I come up to the top. Click and drag over to the right. Now remember, the less points you have, the more smooth your path. Less points, smoother path. So while I could do like this and like this and like this and make all these other little points on my way down, I don't need to do all that. If I can pull it down with just 3, that's what I'm going to do. So now before I let go of this one, I'm going to hit Option and click and drag my handle around. Before I'm going to hold Option and swing my handle around before I ever let go of the click. Now, click and drag up here. And then again, before I let go of the click, hold Option, swing that handle down. Click the point down, drag the handles out, and before I let go, hit Option and swing the handle around. And this one, click and drag my handle up to get that little swoop. Before I let go, hit Option, click and drag my handle around, and just continue repeating this process until I get her hair how I want it. And remember, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. If you want it, you can go back and adjust the handles in the end. Now, before I get to this last one, you see the cursor has the circle on it indicating I'm about to close the path. Remember, if we just click and drag, we're going to mess up that first handle. If our first handle was pulled out with handles, so we want to hit Option before we do that, so that whenever we click it, we've only got one handle that we're manipulating. There we go. And then I can grab my direct selection tool, go back and adjust some of these points as well as some of these handles to get them how I really want them. You can see here if I click and drag in the middle of the line segment, how it will manipulate the handles on either side. If I click and drag on the point, it'll move just the point. If I click and drag on the handle, it will move just the handle. Alright, that looks good enough. Next, let's add some highlights to our hair. We're going to use the pen tool again, but this time we're going to select a different color. The color this time will be 144. Oops. 144, 96, 77. And then hit enter and start making a couple of these little shapes that represent the highlights. And it's no different than the eyelashes or the hair that we've already drawn. We click and drag our handles up or over into the direction that we want. And whenever we want to redirect the direction of the path, we hit Option on our keyboard and swing that handle around. And then before we click on that last one to close it off, because we've got a handle here, we're going to hit Option on the keyboard before clicking, so that we're only manipulating one handle. And we click and drag it out. When we're done, we can go back and continue to refine if we choose. I always do. There we go. And then we repeat that process. Click and drag down, click and drag over, hit Option, swing the handle around. Before I click, hold Option, click and drag. Very good. Come back and refine a little bit by playing with the handles with my direct selection tool, or A on the keyboard. There we go. And drag, click and drag, swing around by holding Option and clicking and dragging. Come over here, hold Option before clicking, clicking and dragging. There we go. Come back with the A and refine the points and the handles. And do the last one. Ta-da! There we go. Now, Little Red Riding Hood needs a hood, so let's make her a circle in the back of her head and then scale it up. Whenever I've already got a circle in place, I know it's a perfect circle, I know everything's aligned. This is one of the times that I'll use Command C or Control C and then Command Shift V or Control Shift V to paste in place, because then I know it's centered just like the rest of them and I don't even have to think about it. Now, I want to change the color to be a red color, so I'm going to go 204, 72, 69, and lock that in by hitting enter. And then before I do anything else, I'm going to grab my direct selection tool and click on the very topmost point, and just the same way that we would adjust those points as we're drawing the path, so we can adjust the points on primitive shapes that we've drawn using the ellipse tool, rectangle tool, whatever. So I'm going to click and drag this point up a little bit and make it kind of like an egg shape. There we go. And then I'm going to hit V on my keyboard to go to the regular selection tool. And I'm going to scale it up just a hair by holding Option and Shift at the same time. Remember, this allows me to expand proportionately and from the center. And then I'm going to send it to back by Command Shift left bracket or Control Shift left bracket. And then I can play with it a little bit here. Right now I'm scaling it width-wise, and I'm holding the Option key to make it expand from the center. And now that we've got this, I think my hood is a little too high, so I'm going to click that point, bring it down just a hair. I think over here on the right, I want her hair to come in just a little bit. There we go. And on this side, I want her hair to come out just a little bit. There we go. So you can see as you're working through your file, you don't feel the need to have everything perfect the first time that you do it. Vectors are free. You can erase them and start over. You can always go back and continue to manipulate them using the direct selection tool to get them exactly how you like them. All right. So now we have Little Red Riding Hood. She needs the end of her hood or her cape. We can do that by grabbing our pen tool and drawing a little leaf shape. Clicking and dragging over to the left, and then clicking and dragging down. And then before we finish that click, we hit Option and swing the handle around. And then before we close the path, we hit Option again so that we don't mess up that first handle. Boom. And then we've got her little hood. I made mine a little bit wide. My Red Riding Hood is going to have some broad shoulders because she's going to run over that big bad wolf. She ain't no punk. Anyhow, right click, transform, reflect, and we'll reflect on a vertical axis. Oh wait, I have to hit cancel. So what it did is, because I was still, even though it looks like I had the whole thing selected, I was actually still within the path that I had drawn. So it wasn't the whole thing, it was only part of the path. Sometimes whenever you draw something, you have to click off of it and then click it back to make sure that you actually have the whole thing selected and not just like part of the path. For example, like this. If I just have this part selected, that's what it will reflect, and that was what happened. So anyhow, grab your selection tool or the black arrow on the tool panel. I hit V on my keyboard. Click, right click, transform, reflect, across a vertical axis, copy, bam, and then click and drag it over holding shift to keep it nice and straight. And now we've got our neat little cape shoulders. Next, we need to draw her dress, and to do that, we'll grab our pen tool and we'll change the color to a nice little pink color. 242, 118, 140. 242, 118, 140. And then we will draw a little semicircle shape by clicking and dragging up, and dragging over, clicking and dragging back down. And you can see mine is very not perfect, but that's okay. And then click and drag over to close it out. Then I'll go back with my direct selection tool, pull it down until I'm satisfied with it. Mess with my handles a little bit, get it how I want it. Very nice. And then again, send it to the back, Control Shift left bracket, Command Shift left bracket. And then you can see these two are not perfectly even, so I can use the Align tool on individual points. The same way that I use the Align tool on objects, I can grab my direct selection tool and click and drag around both of these points and align them at the bottom. Vertical align bottom, and watch what happens to that rightmost point. Now they're perfectly straight. Again, you don't have to get it right the first time. You always have the ability to go back and manipulate further. Let's scale our dress down a little bit. There we go. By clicking and dragging on the bottom of the blue bounding box that's holding that object. Next, we're going to create some arms and some hands using the ellipse tool and the pathfinder tool. So one of the ways that you can manipulate color in Adobe Illustrator, if you don't want to memorize all the little numbers that you're typing in for all these unique colors, you can click on something else that's on your artboard that has the color that you want to use. Illustrator will then grab that fill color as the appearance, and then when I start drawing another shape with the ellipse tool, you see it's already got that peach color. The same is true if I click the pink and then come over here and click off of it and start drawing with the ellipse tool. It's going to grab whatever the most recent fill stroke settings are that I've clicked on. So this is a quick little shortcut that I can grab the color that I already want, because I know her face is the same color as her hand. Now I draw a little ellipse. And then I'm gonna rotate it a little bit to the left. And then holding Shift and Alt, I'm gonna click and drag. Whoops, I'm gonna click and drag. Ooh. There we go. You can see it was giving me a hard time, because if you click it in the middle and if you click it on the actual edge of the path, it behaves differently. Anyhow, click and drag these guys over. And then also, whenever you do it, whenever you first begin the click, you're holding Option, and then now that you've got the click already moved, you've already duplicated it, then you hold Shift. If you try and do them both at the same time, sometimes it'll trip you up as well. Anyhow, now we've got both of them, and then we're going to use the Pathfinder tool on both of them, and again we're going to minus front, using that rightmost circle as the cookie cutter on top of the leftmost circle. And that is our arm, but next we have to make a hand. We'll make a hand again with the ellipse tool and the Pathfinder tool, and we create a couple of little circles or a couple of little ellipses. One of them like this, and another one like this, and then I'll rotate them just a little bit. Scale them a little bit more. There we go. And then while I have this one clicked, I hit Shift on my keyboard and then click the other one so that I have them both selected. Rotate this one just a hair. Click and drag it up. There we go. Thumb needs to be a little bit bigger. There we go. And now I can click and drag around all three of them and hit Unite on the Pathfinder. Boom. And now I have united her arm. And I can click and drag her arm over. Scale it a little bit if I like. And then hitting Command left bracket, not Command Shift left bracket, but Command left bracket, or Control of your PC user. And then just tapping that left bracket a few times until I'm making my way down beneath each of the paths. Right click, transform, reflect. Remember, we're doing it on a vertical axis and we're copying it. And then we click and drag it over. And we have two nice arms for Little Red Riding Hood to beat that mean old wolf with. All right. Next, we're going to draw some legs. So again, I'm going to click on that skin tone color, and I'm going to draw the rectangle. And then I'm going to grab my direct selection tool, click on one of the points at the bottom, another one of the points at the bottom, and tapping my arrow keys, scaling them over just a little bit, sliding them over just a little bit to make it more of a trapezoid rather than a rectangle. And then Option, click and drag, and then I'm going to hold Shift once I have the click and drag going so that I can duplicate the legs. And then I want to put those underneath the dress. So I hit Command Shift left bracket, or Control Shift left bracket if you're on the PC, or right click, arrange send to back if you want to click through the menus. Next, we're going to draw the shoes. This time I'm going to grab the ellipse tool, I'm going to click L, I'm going to hit L on my keyboard, and then I'm going to click over here to get into the colors and adjust the color to 184, 98, 98, 184, 98, oops, whoops, 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 184, 198, 198, oh my goodness, 98, 98, there we go. Now I'm going to create the ellipse on top of her foot area, and I'm going to hold Option so that it expands from the center. So I start my ellipse in the center of her foot, on the center of her ankle if you will, and then holding Option, click and drag over. And then I'm going to hit the direct selection tool and manipulate this a little bit so that it looks more shoe-like. And I do that by clicking the leftmost point and the rightmost point. I'm holding shift so that I can select multiple ones and then dragging them down. I can click and drag this one up just a little bit. There we go. Now it looks more like a little shoe. And then I'm going to duplicate this down by clicking and dragging while holding Option. And I'm going to adjust the color of this to be a little bit darker for the sole of her shoe. 145, 73, 73. Okay, and then Command Shift left bracket, or Command Shift left bracket, or Control Shift right bracket. Left bracket to send to the back, right bracket to send to the front. I want to send it all the way to the back. Now we got a nice little shoe. Let's draw a nice little bow. So we're going to grab the brush tool. I usually don't use the brush tool for very many things, but this tutorial calls for it. So because the brush tool, you can draw freehand with it, so it's useful for some freehand things, but whenever you try to get in there and mess with the points, it gives you way more points than you need, and the handles are kind of wonky. So whenever you want to go back and manipulate things, it makes it a little bit harder to manipulate them and keep them smooth. For this case, we'll go ahead and follow the instructions and use the brush tool. So now that I have the brush tool activated and I have my stroke, my color, the burgundy, whatever, reddish, brownish color is set to my stroke, I'm going to make sure that my brush, let me go to my window, brushes, I'm gonna make sure that I have the 10-point round brush. Oh, there's not a 10-point round brush, that's cool. So that's okay, we have a 5-point round brush. We can double click and turn it into a 10-point round brush. Ta-da! And now, we can draw the little, I'm hitting undo because I started in the wrong place. And now we can draw the little bow. There we go. And now I'm going to duplicate that over by clicking on the brush stroke that I just made, and then holding shift and clicking on the shoe, and then holding shift and clicking on the sole. And then I'm going to right click group, or Command G or Control G if you're on the PC, so that I can group it all together so that all these objects behave together as one. And then Option click and drag while holding shift after I get the click and drag started. And now we got 2 shoes, and you can continue going, adding other things on top of her if you want to get creative. Turn her into a zombie, turn her into a pilgrim, turn her into a race car driver, turn her into whatever else you like, and start making some NFTs. But this right here is your Red Riding Hood. You are ready to rock. Thank you.